Kathy, what ended up making you make that switch from radio to television into real estate? Kind of lead me up to your decision to get into the business.
Well, it was by accident and never meant to be permanent. I mean, that was I had moved here. I had three children in 5 years, and the television gig at that time required 1 week of travel out of the month. So I left on a Monday, came back on a Friday. I managed that with one kid, two kids, three kids. I said, I'm out. I can't, you can only post-it note the house so much, before you leave. And so at the time, my son, who's now 32, was 5 years old, starting going into kindergarten. We owned a home in Reynoldsburg, and I wanted him to go to school in Gahanna. So, as I've told you, I moved a lot. So I thought to myself, you know what? I looked into it and I figured out that I could get a real estate license back then for a couple $1,000s. And I figured out that if all I did was sell the home in Reynoldsburg and buy a home in Gahanna, I had tripled my investment at least. So that, honest to God, was my total intent. That's all I was going to do, because I was enjoying television, and I was, and I was working with my employer to kind of change some things about the travel schedule and all of that. And at that time, my employer, gratefully, was way above the curve. I worked from home. This was in the late
Mm.
90s. Yeah, late 90s, before anyone did it, before there was internet, before there were cell phones. I worked from home, and so I had sort of a good balance. I had 3 weeks at home and then a 1 week on the road, so we were trying to tweak that to allow me to continue that schedule. Well, I did that. I sold my home, we bought another. But John, I laugh about it now because I thought it was because I was such a good realtor. I didn't realize that I jumped in the water literally the year and the month that interest rates dropped below 8% for the first time in 30 years. So all of a sudden I said, this is the easiest money I ever made. I mean, I just held open houses and shook hands, and this was in the era when it was much more people to people contact. And all of the sudden I was saying, kind of the light turned on, and I said I could make 4 times as much money doing this as I do in television and never leave home. So I joke about it now, 25 years in. I was always going to quit in 6 months. I was always going to say I'm going to do this for 6 months, then I'm going to get out. And all of a sudden, I ended up getting laid off from the television job, which was a welcome and whole different story. But all of a sudden, that was it. I was selling real estate, and from the beginning doing fairly well at it. And so just started a 25-year journey, which, by the way, and I say this to you, I think with technology and social media and everything else, it is much harder today to get into this business than what it was in 1996. You think it would be easier because of the tools available. I
Yeah.
so admire the generation behind me that's making this gig work with all the tools you have, because to me, all social media did and all the internet did was separate you from real people. And back in the day when I was doing it, people had to meet you. They had to shake your hand. They had to come to your open house to get to know you. And I think it's much more difficult today than it was back in when I got in the business.
That's an interesting perspective. I've never really thought about that as far as it created more distance. I think access has been probably a little bit easier, but it honestly, like you
Yeah,
said, created more distance from the face to face, which is ultimately what we need to do. As real estate
right.
agents, we can't sell over the phone. We don't sell over the phone, right? We actually have to
No,
get face to face and
it's
shake
still
hands.
sales.
So,
Yeah. I said in my Hondros classes back in 1996 with a young guy who was coming out of the locksmith business, and he was becoming a realtor. And I remember every day he would come to class. And again, this was the burgeoning of the internet. This was when .coms were coming, and he had already gotten his own website, and he was talking about how he was buying this domain name, and it was all about technology. And I remember being so intimidated, thinking, boy, I didn't even have a cell phone. I'd never done an email. And I remember being so intimidated, thinking, oh, this guy is just going to blow me out of the water because he's so far ahead. That guy lasted 4 years in the business because in the end, you have to be able to establish trust in 30 seconds on the phone talking to someone.
Hmm.
I don't care what whiz bang tools you have, even in 2023, it's still someone has to look at you and say, I trust John Harp that I'm going to invest $250,000 to $500,000 and he knows what he's doing. And you simply
Yeah.
can't do that with a phone. You simply can't do that with an exchanged email here or there.
Right. No, spot on. Now, I'm curious when you made that you kind of, I guess, eased into, I don't want to say eased into real estate because that's not the right word, but when you made the decision getting your license, it was like, okay, selling this house, buying this house, that's it. But then the market kind of, had other plans for you. Did you have doubters? Did you have supporters? Because a lot of times, like I said, agents are coming from a different career where it's security, W two, salary, whatever, to full blown, 100% commission based. And so I'm curious, did you have a lot of doubters? Did you have supporters to help kind of guide you through that path of getting into this business when you kind of said, hey, this is a little bit more than what I was expecting, and it's kind of working.
Um, yes and no. One, I was very new to Columbus. I had only lived in Columbus at that point for a few years, so I didn't have a wide circle of people who knew me or knew my background. Um, but the opposite is true. Everybody I told that I was becoming $1 million, I mean, realtor said, "I'm gonna make $1 million." Because when you already have a background of communication and sort of public relations, and you're out there, it was sort of an assumption. Oh yeah, you'll do good in sales. You'll do great. So from the outside, no, I had only cheerleaders. I doubted it. I really thought,
Mm,
and for many years I was the sole income of my family. I really thought, can I jump off of this diving board and will there be water in the pool? Or did I just luck out that the first few transactions worked? Did I just happen to trip on some good clients? And also, John, back then I had nothing to compare it to. I was with Coldwell Banker when I started. I was their rookie of the year, the first year I was in business, and I was shocked. I thought, I don't feel like I did anything. I had nothing to compare it to as to, was this good? Was it bad? I just knew that day to day, as I began looking at the income potential, and I liked it. Okay, I mean, it was fairly, to me, at that point, the recession was another story, but at that point, it was pretty easy to do the
sure.
work. I just thought, yeah, I can do this. Now, within a year, I thought, okay, I'm good. I feel I'm confident enough that I can, make this new job work and stay stable. But no, I was probably the biggest doubter of anyone around me.